Good morning. So my name is Shane. I recognise a few faces from last year, which was my first JUG user group. So this is number 2 for me. I'm just a baby. I'll be talking in a wee bit along with Tim A. But first, my pleasure to introduce Tim Warren. So lots of Tims today. Tim is from Ambit, and Jade and Ambit have been working together for
6 months.
6 months, yeah. So around conversational intelligence, conversational platforms. So Tim's asked me to tell you to treat this pretty much as an AMA. So, and ask me anything. It's, what was your words? Unstructured and fluid.
Yeah, that'll do.
That'll do. So please feel free, jump in if you have any questions at any point. Tim, go away.
Thanks very much. I'm just going to kick off with a video to set the scene a little bit. Yep.
At Ambit, we've built an intelligent conversation platform that allows natural and realistic chat experiences across any channel. Ambit provides a new way to take your communication to the next level. The conversation platform allows you to talk to customers and staff using natural language in real time across voice, text, and digital avatar. A simple way for anyone within your organization to build intelligent conversations. Anyone can create a digital employee without a single line of code. Here's how it's done. Meet our newest digital employee, Mia. First, we'll design Mia's first few words in the design space. Here, we create conversations in a visual flow, with each point in the conversation being called a node. We'll write Mia's self-introduction, her purpose, and her first question, how can I help you? Just like any recruit, Mia needs to learn the ropes. The teach space is where the digital employees learn about the conversations your customers want to have, in all the possible ways the conversation could go. Back in design space, we'll create the equivalent reply and design the rest of the conversation. We will also apply sentiment analysis for this particular interaction. After that's done, we'll test the conversation. In some cases, your customer just wants to talk to a human. The customer chat with Mia can be transferred to a real person seamlessly. Once the real person has responded, they can hand back to Mia to carry on with the conversation. Whether you want 24/7 customer support or serving internal employees, by working with Ambit, the possibilities are endless. We work with organizations all over the world to deliver connected conversations. Contact one of our team for a free demo today.
Okay, I'll start talking. So, I should have changed that last slide. If you want a demo, you can also talk to Jade. So, as Shane said, we've been working together for about 6 months, and this came from a fortuitous meeting that was set up by Vodafone, who saw that we were doing some similar things and thought that we could work together. So, now the reason I want to have this as unstructured is because in the world of conversation, it's not just that I tell you and you just listen and do what I say. That would be great, actually, if we could just cut to that chase, but that's not realistic. Everything's a conversation. Ultimately, people want to talk to a person. That's such an underlying driver, not of just a business, not just but it's also just personal connections. So what we want to do is create a platform where you can enable that in a really easy way. So instead of setting it up so it takes a very sophisticated set of coding and months of understanding and requirement, you can design, that was a real example that was created there. You can design a simple conversation in literally minutes. And then if you want to design a sophisticated conversation, you can do that as well. The point with conversation is it's two-way. And so we have to be able to both tell and also be able to listen to what's being said. And these are things that we've been creating now since 2017 when we launched. Ambit is Ambit is fundamentally a platform software company. So what we do is we've created that platform there, and we put that in the hands of primarily companies such as Jade, and then also for some of the operations, companies such as yourself, so you can manage those realistic two-way conversations directly with your clients and customers and employees. I'll get onto in a little bit the kind of use cases that we do come across. But first I want to go back to that concept of the old paradigm, which is information displayed on a screen and it's kind of one-way push and you have to know how to use it. So if you know, think of the terms click and swipe and scroll and type, all of these are to do with the computer. None of it is to do with you. None of it's to do with the actual user, and spinning it round so you're user-centered. No user actually wants to type anything. No user actually wants to click buttons and scroll and do these things. What they want to do, they just want an outcome. And that's why one of the good aligning things we found with Jade was that with a very similar user and customer centered approach, we focus on the outcomes that are desired and what the end users of the products and the end users of the service are actually after. So we let go of technology and we say, well, what can we achieve from the user's perspective, and everything else follows from that. And that's one of the unique things. We had Shane ran a very good workshop for us with a large healthcare provider a couple of weeks back, and I went into the beginning and it was a typical workshop kickoff, and then I said my goodbyes and came back a couple of hours later and everyone was hugging each other, and one of the key aims out of the workshop apparently was to make friends, and this is all the stuff that happens when you're leading with conversation and you're thinking about the end users of your services. And when I talk about those end users, yes, it might be clients, it might be customers, it can also be your employees, and I'll talk about a couple of those use cases in a sec. So with those old school approaches, what it does is it makes it about the power sits in the hands of technology who make decisions often without a lot of consultation. If we spin that around to Ask Me Anything, which is the format of here, and you're welcome to put hands up and interrupt at any time. If we put that in the format of that, the content and what's delivered is driven by the end user. So I'll give you an example. I didn't show it in there in that demo, but we've got a human operated console we call Live Assist, which means that someone might be initially talking to a chatbot, and then you saw the operator there jump in. Francis Rickard is here to help. So we can launch these conversational experiences either through voice or through chat or through text, and you don't even need to have any of the automation of the conversation there at first. What do? You just respond to the user's queries. So you've got all the questions that come through, and they actually inform you. They define what you need. And so as opposed to, I've been in some pretty serious requirements processes. I used to work at Goldman Sachs, and we were replacing our back office, 18 months of scoping and requirements. 18 months, right? And if you think the world doesn't change during 18 months, especially when you're leading up to the GFC, you've got something coming. So the opposite of that is the no requirements, no scope, is to understand the briefest of outcomes. You can put people directly talking to your end users, and then you can learn from that. And that's where the power of data comes in. So our data tools enable this virtuous circle where you can listen to what people are saying, you can understand the frequency of, right, okay, 80% of people, 80% of the inquiries are around these 10 questions, those are the ones to automate. Now, yes, you can probably go and work out what your frequently asked questions are, just as you might do it on a website. You've probably already got them. That's a good place to start. But you actually don't know until you really listen to your users, and until you listen to your customers, you're not really going to know what you need to do. And that's what we really advocate is start small, start fast, but start early. You're not going to have the final approach or the final delivery for this ever. This is much more like having a child piece of software, and over time it develops, and you're helping it develop. You're giving it inputs. Jade can build some sophisticated integrations for you, maybe into a CRM or your ERP, but find out what the users actually want. And I'll give you an example here. So one of the things we created, one of our early deliveries was for KPMG. And KPMG had a problem. They had 1,200 staff in the country. They had 9 people in their service desk. And so roughly 1% of the staff were providing internal service, an IT service. And their CIO said, hey, I need a 10th person, but can I have a digital person? Can I have a digital employee? And from that moment on, that's what we've been referring to as digital employees. I don't really like the term chatbots. I think it kind of cheapens and certainly hides the sophistication. This is much more like a person. It's much more like an employee on your staff. So we said, okay, well, what do you need to do to enable an employee who's going to be a really good service desk employee? So we talked to the people that are needing service. We said, well, what are the things you need to be able to do? Where are you when you do it? How do you resolve these normally? And what we discovered is, well, as the CIO was correct, people are waiting quite a long time for things that should be an instant turnaround. So we did the Pareto law, 80-20. We said, well, what are the questions we need to cover 80% of the help desk inquiries? It was 14 questions. That was all. Now, some of them are simple. It's question and answer. Who knows what the most common question is to IT help desk? Yes. And you know what the second most common one is? I've lost my iPhone, which is always coincides with when there's a new one out, right? So with the one about I've lost my iPhone or I've broken it, there's an awful lot. It always happens just before September, just around September. You know the importance of that date. So what we do is we look at the resolution steps. They're usually pretty similar, pretty simple, and we just put in a simple bit of process for people to follow that they won't do if they're given a web page. They won't do if they're given a printed form. What they do is then they walk over angrily. It's like, oh, it's bloody phone. They throw it down, causing more damage. And but now what we've done is we've put it in their hands. So it's incredibly easy to use, and also. One of the side effects that we learned really early on with KPMG is there's a bunch of questions that people want to ask that they're embarrassed to ask. Do you know one of the really common questions when they take in about 100 graduates a year? You know what one of the most common questions is for them? When can I go to the toilet? Right? So we know the answer to that, which is like, you're a grown up, sort yourself out, right? Graduates coming in, they don't know that, and so then we had a second discussion about it. It's like, well, what if we didn't just do service desk? What if we make Kia, which is the name of the virtual employee, what if we make Kia the go-to person for everything in the business? Any question that you've got, it's a private one, it's something which is a bit sensitive, maybe it's something like taking parental leave, or when a bonus is going to be paid, or something along those lines. Those are hard questions to answer. To ask some of the time. You call them door hangers. Someone comes and asks you one question, but actually there's another one they want to ask, and they're just like, oh, just before I go. So those questions. So we said, actually, there's a whole thing here we hadn't worked out. The questions that are hard to ask, and you do it in a private and a secure manner, and people actually prefer to ask an automated virtual employee than they do to go down to HR and cause a fuss or whatever it is. That led to an understanding that maybe an HR advisor itself would be a really useful digital employee, and that's what we built and delivered to Vodafone. So that's now very busy, incidentally. So that's a couple of examples of what we can do. So the important thing is understanding the cycle of data. So when people ask a question, we can see it in our interface. We call it Synapse, so you can see everything that's going on, every conversation that's being had across any channel. So it could be web, it could be Facebook, it could be WhatsApp, SMS, voice. We've got numerous others. If it can be integrated, it can connect in. There's a real power in having all of the conversations in your company come into a single place. You end up developing, it starts off very unstructured, an unstructured corpus of conversation. A knowledge base is kind of the old term for it. But once you run that back out through conversations where you can capture that knowledge that people are having, and then you can put it back out in an automated fashion, you get this virtuous cycle where you're being asked the questions that matter, you put some effort into automating that conversation, and then it's supporting people at infinite scale. And when I talk about scale, I'll give you another example. I was contacted by the CIO of Hellenstein Glasses, and he said, I've got a really good problem, which is the fact the business is growing so fast that we're struggling with customer services. So we went and we looked at what are the common queries. I said, well, the things that really take us time are the exchanges, refunds, and all that. So we've automated all of that for them in a conversational setting, accessible through Facebook and through the web. And so people can ask those simple questions like, you saw one up there, you sent me a top, it's the wrong size, can I exchange it? And it takes them through that process. And it's having 50 to 60 of those conversations a day now. It's doing the work of several people, and also it tends to be more accurate. And what's happened is a double-digit decline in the number of requests that they're getting, percentage-wise, and the number of requests they're getting to their service desk, the customer service desk, while the business has grown 60%. So it's easily halved the volume that you would expect, and at a fixed cost, right? So there's a minor usage cost, but essentially this is a very effective medium, so usage costs tend to be relatively limited. So once you put it in, you've got this virtual employee. There's really no limit to the scale of what you can put in, and this goes to the importance of using a platform. If you try the approach of using what I call a bunch of high-quality tools of the type of Lewis or Watson, or the various cognitive services that are available, you end up, as a software developer, and you end up with a maintenance problem. How do you expand this platform? How do you learn? You have to go off and do that research and development yourself. All of that is being done in a central place for us on top of our platform. So all of the learnings we get from how to manage language and various languages and multiple channels, etc., are contained in the one place. So think of it like the Salesforce analogy, where you sign up for Salesforce and you pay the subscription, but any improvements that you get along the way, they all flow through to that license. So Salesforce looks quite different 2 years down the track from how it did when you first signed up for it, and that's what we've created. So a couple of other use cases. Actually, can I turn it around now? Can I get people to put their hand up if they have used a chatbot or a virtual employee in some way? Oh, actually, it's pushing a half, which is really encouraging. So the fascinating things happened between last year, if I'd asked this question, and this year. Last year there'd still be a handful of people, and even the year before a handful of people, but it wasn't anything like half of the room. The thing that we're getting the big difference now is that we're getting incoming inquiry from people who've got very defined use cases. They know exactly what it is. Essentially, customer service is the big use case here, and they want a particular solution. And people are much more open to. I guess we've moved from that state of being just the pure innovators through to the early adopters, and the people who are prepared to say, let's give something a go. Let's try it in a relatively constrained environment and see if it's going to work for us. And that's a big change from 2 years ago. If you wanted to try something like this out, it was $1 million ticket to get something going. And then a year ago, if you were using a non-platform approach, it was still an expensive exercise. Now you can get something up and running that does customer services, simple FAQs, a few integrations, etc., to be able to help across a large number of your frequently asked questions. That's measured in weeks to get that running now. So it's not that very expensive process of committing to something over multi years of funding. You can actually give something a go in a what do we say, pretty much from when we kick off, run a workshop, a couple of weeks of build, a couple of weeks of testing, and you've got a proof of concept in your hands that is not just a proof of concept, it's actually a pilot, and a lot of people are happy then to put that in customers' hands. So you can build from that, it's not a throwaway. So can I ask if anyone here has tried to build any of these cognitive services or chatbots in their organisation? Good, no one. That's exactly what I want to hear. Okay, I've got a few more things to talk about, but does anyone have any questions so we can make this a two-way dialogue? Yes?
I'm a bit of an old duck, you know, I've been
Yeah.
around a long time. When I used to teach at the university,
Yeah.
one of the things that your problem was getting geeky young students to
Mm.
talk to you.
Right.
And it seems to be with something like KPMG that the new employees
Mm.
you're discouraging them from interacting with people by letting them just talk to a bot.
Yeah.
You see that as an issue?
It's a good point, and we put a lot of thought into it. And this is the approach that we've taken. You can't control people, so go to where they are. And where are the young people? They're in text. That's what they're doing, right? So yes, you can encourage their behaviour in a particular direction, but if you give them the tools, they'll use whatever suits them. They really will. It also does another thing. What happens is when you solve their annoying, kind of call it the low value questions, like when can I go to the toilet, or can I get a new phone? It means that the people on that desk have now more people time. They're not stuck behind that support, that big backlog of support questions, answering questions behind email. They can get out onto the floor. And in the KPMG example, what the CIO, our sponsor, said was, I want my team, instead of doing those low value ones, I want them to be out on the floor more. And if there's a partner who's got a problem, my team can actually take the time now to go out and talk to them. So what it does is it uses people's existing behaviour and hopefully achieves a benefit out of it by, I guess, piggybacking on that. And to give you some stats of where are people, so in the social media world, people think, oh, Facebook's really big and it's busy. Do you know that Facebook Messenger has more activity than the entire rest of the Facebook platform? And within that, 1/4 of messages in Messenger are to do with the business, are business related. So there's massive activity there, but you don't see it because it's private, because it's point to point. You only see the stuff that is broadcast. I've got a problem. Well, you don't want your users on Twitter broadcasting their problem. People go to Twitter usually, or something like that, which is always a frustrating experience when you're trying to support them. They usually have tried other methods. You know the thing, when you send off the email, you don't get a response. You've tried the phone call, you wait in the queue for 10 minutes. Well, I can solve both of those and have a response to someone in 10 seconds. Yeah, it could be phone through a phone bridge, and we can run voice into our platform. And it could be where the young people, pretty much most people under 30 are using text far more than voice, even I do. So it's really using their behaviour to get them a better outcome. Anyone else? Questions about what I've talked about? Yeah, down the back.
A scenario I came across a while ago. Sorry, I'm going to give you this so everyone can hear you.
There's a mic coming your way.
Yep. Thank you. I wanted to do a change of address for my mother for their telephone.
Yeah.
So I went to the Spark website, couldn't find the change of address form. So typed in, where is it, sort of thing, got this paperclip or something came up and asked my question, how do I find the change of address form? So it produced a change of address form. I filled it in,
Yeah.
sent it off, that was fine, but I still don't know where to find it.
Right. So is that the actual virtual employee or the virtual agent?
It's the virtual agent on the website.
Right.
It gave me a change of address form that I
Yeah.
could fill in, but it didn't tell me where to find it.
Right. So two things there. So I think an under-realised use case where it shouldn't have given you a form, it should have just asked you directly, right? Oh, what's the new address? Fine, I'll sort that out. Ask you the security questions. So that would have been if you delivered a proper conversational experience. But in the case where that you had, they could have provided some kind of follow-up or made it easier to find. I absolutely agree.
Or done both.
Yeah, could have done both.
Here's the form, this is where you find it.
Yeah. Now, in a conversational world, you don't need a form, and that's where we're trying to get people. But so the step one when you adopt something like this is you use existing technologies, you've got a website, you've got a bunch of forms, and you use it as think of it like a concierge, where it says, oh yeah, this is where the form is. That's where that is. Now, step two is actually saying, no, you don't need that now. Just talk to me directly. tell me what you need and I'll sort it out. I'll fill out the form. And that's what I mean by making the technology disappear. We don't promote ourselves as a technology company. We promote ourselves as a company that specialises in conversation, getting things done through conversation and making conversations matter. So you were going through multiple steps there, and then you felt a little bit bewildered because you didn't really get information, recorded the information maybe, and you wouldn't know how to find it again. So solving that problem. We talk about a couple of things. We talk about a post-search world. So in search, you put in a few key terms, and then you get a whole big list of 17 million things about X from Google. That's really good. If you talk to a person, that's not what they do. So let's think of this from the perspective of what would it be if you were talking to the smartest person in that organisation, and everyone's got one. Generally in an organisation, I'm looking at you, John, there's someone who probably knows almost everything about how to solve that problem. They might not have all the answers, but they've been there a long time, they know the people, they're like, hey, this is who you need to talk to. That's what we can create, and it's very different to here's your knowledge base, here's Google. Those are very different paradigms. Again, what does a person do if there's no technology involved? They just ask a person. It's the most natural thing. That's what we can create in a conversational environment. Anyone else? Anyone want to challenge me on these things? What we can do? Yeah.
I would guess that your most difficult part of that whole thing the most difficult part of the whole thing would be to identify the questions and the responses that those questions should elicit.
Well, that's the essence of conversation. You've got both sides of it. That's 100% of it. Everything else is technology, and we make that disappear anyway with integration. So you're absolutely right. There's two things. There's something that people say, and there's something that you do, right, on the back of that. And they're silly names, and utterance is what you say, and intent, which is what you want to do. And so we use those terms. So identifying those is critically important. You're generally pretty good at finding about half of them, just internally within an organisation, like in a workshop setting that you might run with Shane. You'll identify a good half of those questions. We then integrate really early user testing, which initially would be internal with your internal users, and then your wider user set, which really quickly fills up the balance. And then with the tools that you've got, you can say, lots of people asking this question, let's put a conversation around that, which means that if that question is, how do I access the office after hours, for instance, that might be as simple as remember, it's a conversational response. It's not the kind of thing you might find on a web page. It might be as simple as this: talk to your manager to get approval, and we'll make sure that your key pass is set up. Do you want to send a message to your manager now? That's how you do it in a conversational setting, as opposed to the 9 pages of your form, and maybe you've got it hidden away somewhere on Confluence, or more likely hidden away in a security folder. So you respond as people ask the questions. You can either respond with the preformed question because you know the answer. You can use the human to jump in on the live assist, or it might fail. And failing is good. Failing means that you've discovered a new area you need to address, and then a week later it answers that question. And that's the process of supervised learning. Where we're going to in future, and this is not a current thing we do, but when we can watch all of the conversations happening in an organisation, the ones that you give it permission to, it will get to the point where it can recommend answers. So you might have a human operator can oversee it, and they can say, oh look, it's these people are answering the question. My 3 different people on customer services, this is the answer, and it will give a condensed answer for you. Do you wish to automate this conversation? 1 click, and that's done. And that's coming later this year, and that's getting pretty automated.
And we do have a demo coming up shortly, so we'll be able to see some of this working and failing in action. And answer questions based on that.
Failing in action, I like that.
Do you have anything else you want to cover off before we hand over? If you can stick around for questions.
Yeah, I'll stick around for questions. Does anyone else have any questions? Yeah.
Part of the benefit of having a text conversation is to be able to go back to the text conversation.
Yeah.
I just know what you actually said, what they said back to you. How does the chatbot handle that?
We keep it for all time. Yeah.
So in terms of the conversation that you've had with Bob, is it sent to you afterwards? Is that a normal thing?
Absolutely, if you want that. So what we find, think of Facebook Messenger as a really good example. So every time you chat to someone, or if you chat to a chatbot, think of interacting with a person. You don't get a transcript emailed to you because that's old think, right? What you do is you've always got a session open, and then if you want to respond to it, you just pick up where that conversation fell off. So it's always there waiting for you. Now, anonymous sessions, obviously that's a little bit tricky to go and find. But if someone, I'll give you an example, on the chat on our site, you ask it a few questions and it can, it'll say, hey, if you want someone to get back to you, give us your email address. So you can do that. Otherwise you lose someone through an anonymous section. But yes, it's always stored, and what we do is we constantly go back and retrospectively analyse those conversations to keep learning from them, and then all of that conversation you've had for all time in a session is available as context for any discussion you have in the future. Makes it very powerful. It's like the employee that never forgets. Any other questions? I'll be generally around for the next.
We should have some time at the end of the demo for more questions to the group as well.
Right. Okay, if there's nothing more, I'll hand over. I think it's Shane next. Thanks very much.
So Shane and Tim.